tonight I am sitting here with, let you guys introduce yourselves.
I am Adam Bartlett, co-writer, co-director of the independent film Dead Weight.
And I am John Pata, the other co-writer and co-director of the film Dead Weight.
And if you guys out there, read my blog, my review site, you'll see that Dead Weight was one of the highest rated films that I reviewed last year. It was one that I absolutely loved. If you haven't read it, then you probably should go read that, pause this, and go read that, and then come back here and listen to this afterwards. So we're going to go through a few questions here, talk about some movie stuff, and then talk about this particular movie, and we'll have some fun, hopefully, here. So first off, guys, was there a particular film that you guys saw that made you think, I want to make movies? And we'll just start, how about you, John?
I would say that there was 3 that really played a part into it. Jaws was the first movie I saw that when I was younger, I was probably 6 or 7, and my parents explained to me how the shark didn't work. And, what we now know. But as a kid, that was the first time that the idea of filmmaking came to mind, where that, oh wow, there's actually stuff that happens behind the camera. So that, I would say, was my first exposure into filmmaking. And then there was a TV show, which isn't exactly a movie, but it was called Movie Magic, that was on in like the early to mid 90s, that basically showed special effects and how they did stuff with miniatures and models and how they filmed this and how they filmed that. That really got me super amped up for filmmaking. And then to top it off, I saw Evil Dead when I was 10, and I totally lost my mind. And
completely appropriate for a 10-year-old.
Yeah, I saw Evil Dead and Dead Alive in the same year, actually, so it obviously did a lot of good.
Right.
But yeah, when I saw Evil Dead, it exposed me to more independent horror, underground horror, because at that point I was just watching like the Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Streets and the Halloweens, so the mainstream stuff. But then when I saw people just going out in a cabin in the woods and just doing some crazy shit in front of a camera, then it was all over. And it was basically from that point on where I was like, yeah, I totally want to make a movie now.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know how you feel. I saw The Toxic Avenger when I was probably 10 or 12.
Sure.
And yeah, again, very appropriate movie for a kid that age to watch. And I just remember seeing that kid's head get run over and how that replayed in my dreams for years. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Adam, what about you?
Even though I grew up watching movies with my dad, like every weekend we would just rent movies and watch them. For me, it was a lot more just storytelling in general. I got really into reading heavily when I was in high school and discovered the Stephen King's Dark Tower series, and that like totally changed my life and how I felt about what I realized storytelling could be. But in terms of like movie, I guess like the first movie I ever saw where I really looked at it and was like, holy shit, how did they do all this stuff, was totally Jurassic Park. Like that was like the movie, that was like my first favorite movie growing up. Like I loved watching movies with my dad and everything, but when Jurassic Park came out, I was like, that was when I was like, I need to know everything about this. I need to know how they did all of this, like all these special effects, how they made the dinosaurs look real. Like I was so totally immersed in that, and it blew my mind. And then when 7 came out on VHS, when the VHS came out, my dad rented it and we watched it together. That was sort of the turning point for me when I realized that visual storytelling could be super, super dark and miserable with like what our friend Scott calls no positive redeeming value whatsoever. And that was like a point at which I was like, it just opened my eyes to how dark storytelling could be. So it was a combination, I guess, of those 2 big key ones early on in my life, and then getting really heavily into reading and literature and a lot of sci-fi and fantasy stuff, Philip K. Dick, Tolkien, the big names and everything. But that's what really turned me on to storytelling more than anything.
And I would like to congratulate Adam for recently purchasing Jurassic Park on DVD.
For the 3rd time. I've owned it 3 times.
I have to loan him my copy of Jurassic Park like 4 times a year. And he sent me a text the other day with a picture of
the trilogy, all 3 of them.
The box set.
Oh, nice.
Finally, you don't have to borrow my fucking copy anymore.
Yeah.
So you're going to go see it in 3D in the theaters?
Oh, fuck yeah, I am. I don't even care or like 3D movies at all. Even stuff even stuff I know, like a Pixar film, like when Up came up. I love Pixar movies.
Mm-hmm.
I did not give a shit about seeing that in 3D whatsoever, even though I was really excited about the story. So that movie though, yeah, definitely. Like, awesome. I will watch all the dinosaurs in 3D.
I'll probably have to go see it with you.
Yeah,
goddamn.
I'll have to drag that, right?
You can pay for my 3D glasses.
Sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, Jurassic Park. That's a really fun one because lots of people like to dog it, but I was huge into Michael Crichton when that came out. He was my favorite author. So
people that dog Jurassic Park are people not worth talking to. Ever.
There you go. And plus, anybody who's into music, little tidbit, Adam Jones did special effects on that. So, so all you Tool fans who think you're too cool for Jurassic Park, well, he used to be in Industrial Light and Magic back then. So
he did corpses on Predator too, didn't he?
I think he did.
I think so.
He was back in Industrial Light and Magic back in the early '90s era. So shut your face. Jurassic Park is cool.
Yep.
So let's move on here. Again, we'll start with you, John. So who would you say is your favorite director working today, and why?
Okay. Well, I'm going to have to go with Peter Jackson, even though I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of his most recent films. But Peter Jackson for sure. It was again kind of that exposure that I had when I saw Evil Dead, and then I went back and I saw Dead Alive first, and then I went and saw Bad Taste and then Meet the Feebles. And got into his just total do it his own kind of way of filmmaking, and I totally respect him to this day still. Yeah. And granted, he's come a really, really long way.
Yeah.
I put it terribly into The Hobbit, and I haven't seen King Kong, which I understand why he did it, and I love Peter Jackson, but I just can't bring myself to watch it.
I own it, and I still haven't opened it, so I understand.
Yeah, I totally get why he does it, or why he did it. And, he added stuff that was in the original script, but if I'm going to watch King Kong, I'm not going to watch one from 2008 or whatever. Go back to the 30s.
Yeah, and that's awesome because Peter Jackson, he's a big influence on my early, wanting to be independent filmmaker, and that's the exact same order I saw his stuff in, too. Sure. And after Meet the Feebles, it's like, holy shit, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
But in such a good way,
I'm not the biggest fan of Heavenly Creatures, but you can't deny the fact that it's a beautifully crafted film, and I mean that has one of the most disturbing and vicious murder scenes I think I've ever seen. And so it's a very effective movie. It's not necessarily what I like, or I didn't care for too much, but I thought Lovely Bones was fantastic, and obviously the Lord of the Rings movies. Frighteners has its moments again.
My wife and I just recently, maybe 3 months ago, picked up the director's cut of Frighteners.
Sure.
Which I actually liked a lot more than the original, though it's been, 10 years, 15 years since I've seen the original, so it's kind of tough to really make a valid, comparison of the two.
And I really like Peter Jackson's mentality, where he shoots everything in his homeland of New Zealand, and he's all about where he comes from and showcasing his country in his films, and he uses a lot of the same people. I mean, shit, there was the dude that did Wobbit's voice from Meet the Feebles was doing voices in The Hobbit, and so he's bringing back the same people, even if they're not the stars of the films. They have some sort of incorporation, and I've never met him, but he seems like such a huge nerd and such just a genuine person. We watch all the production blogs for all his films, and I admire and respect the guy so much.
You gotta respect, when you have somebody who remembers the people that supported him before he was famous.
Yep.
That's one of the things I always like when you see those filmmakers who, have actually made it from where you guys are at now to where somebody like him is now, but yet they've brought along those people who helped them when they were, not well known outside of their local metro area type of thing. So,
for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Adam, what about you?
Peter Jackson is obviously a big one. I don't know of any nerd out there that doesn't love what Peter's doing, but. And I'm surprised John didn't at least make mention of this. Edgar Wright, hands down, probably my biggest influence when John and I decided to start working on a film. Because, like I said, whereas John like is like filmmaking's been like his thing that he's wanted to do for a long time. Like I run a record label and I'm more involved in music, and we both love music, but it's like that's my baby and that's what I do, and I love writing. And I never thought that would transition into filmmaking. So like over the past 3 years or so, it was sort of like this new thing to me. But Edgar Wright has always been someone that like everything he does, I love absolutely. The dude's like just like all the nerdy, dorky things that he puts in his films, like all the little references to stuff, and you know, like you watch the any of the stuff that has the homage meter bonus features. Do they have one in Shaun of the Dead, or is it just Hot Fuzz?
I think on the British one there's one for Shaun.
Yeah, but I mean, like in Hot Fuzz, there's tons of them, and then like on Space. Jesus, there's like that's like I swear to God, like he just comes up with stuff that he wants to reference and writes stories around it. Like that's how many there are, and I love like his passion for the things that he grew up on and that he loves, like the stories that he loves, and his how much he loves paying homage to that stuff. But aside from that, too, like, dude is such a... Even from, like, Spaced all the way through to the most recent stuff he's done, like, it's all awesome. Like, there's not any point in there where I go back and watch it and be like, oh, this doesn't really stand up. You know, like, I can pop in Spaced when I'm working on stuff and be laughing for, like, the 100th time at the same dumb joke that they threw in there years and years and years ago. So, he's definitely huge. Visually, Sam Mendes, I think, is fantastic, like, visual director. The Skyfall, the newest James Bond movie that came out, I probably watched 3 movies last year. but that was easily, like, I thought one of the best. That was the best film I saw last year, and definitely, like, one of the better things I'd seen in a long time. I'm a huge James Bond fan. It's my favorite James Bond movie, easily.
Wow.
I thought it was absolutely beautiful. Like, that is one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. So those 2 I think are pretty high up on my list.
Well, if you're gonna do 2, then I'm gonna do.
No, I did 2 in less time than you did 1. That's why I did 2.
Well, and
no,
Edgar Wright,
you talk too much.
Edgar Wright would have been my number 2, but I was just going of all time, dude.
Yeah, but you babbled about it.
Shut up.
That's your favorite director working today. So if we had to choose a favorite director of all time, would that be the same person, or do you have somebody different?
If you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would tell you David Fincher was pretty goddamn high on the list, because like there was a period of time in there where he was just on fire with what he's doing, and Ridley Scott too. Like when you do what he did like in the 70s and 80s,
right?
Like, but yeah, over the past few years, not so much.
But if we could go to time periods, if you could give me John Carpenter 1976 to 1994, fuck yeah, I'm gonna totally pick John Carpenter too. But
wait, when did Vampires come out? You putting Vampires in there?
Vampires is 96, I think. No,
okay.
I think it was 97. Yeah, it's outside of that range.
I was going up to In the Mouth of Madness.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That is one of my favorite John Carpenter movies, and no one ever remembers that one.
So good.
It's so fucking good.
That's like, if I have to rank John Carpenter movies, that's like number 3 or number 4. So.
What's number 1?
The Thing.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only answer.
Yeah. The Thing is number 1 for sure. And then probably Assault on Precinct 13. I really like that one.
Sure.
So, and then In the Mouth of Madness would be, you know, like I said, number 3 or number 4. So right up there in the top. So I don't know. I dislike some of the ones that a lot of people really love, like The Fog. Doesn't really do much of anything for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like it. I don't go crazy over it. I just think it's a nice classic ghost story.
Yeah, you know, truthfully, I've watched it a few times, and I don't know that I've ever made it all the way through without falling asleep and having to rewind parts. So,
I'm just also a big Tom Atkins fan. So you put Tom in front of the camera, and I'm usually into it.
Yeah. See, I don't have that. So,
you know, what's Frank Darabont up to now that he hasn't been working on
Godzilla? No, he's fleshing out the script for a new Godzilla movie. That is going to be... It's not going to be like Godzilla 2000. It's going to be Godzilla in the original universe.
Oh, okay.
And in terms of, like, awesome storytelling, is it Vince Gilligan or Vince Gillian, the guy that does Breaking Bad? I don't remember his last name.
I don't know.
But he worked on a ton of awesome X-Files episodes, too. Like, I love Breaking Bad.
He was a writer.
Yeah. Like, he wrote a ton, like, some of my favorite X-Files episodes, like Paper Hearts. with Tom Noonan. Man,
Oh yeah.
yeah, that dude. I love his storytelling.
So
You better stop us.
okay, well, let's go on to the next one. Let's just stop there. So, what is your favorite part of the filmmaking process? Writing, shooting, editing, making people do horrible things, and then pretending like you're going to pay them for it. I mean, what is the part that just you love the most?
Well, we were nice enough to put out there that there was no pretense of payment whatsoever. It was very much like, you got some free time? You want us to yell at you for a while? No. I definitely loved writing. I loved putting the story together and going back and editing the script and fleshing out the outlines. I don't know, just to me that's like, I feel more connected with that process, and I feel like that's when you first like craft the world that you want your story to take place in and where your characters live, and you figure out who they are. And like I don't know. When I read a story, I'm envisioning everything in my head the whole time. So it was a cool experience to be able to write the story and have that be happening too, like having it play out in my head and seeing the characters in my head and then casting them and seeing them come to life in that way.
So had you written things before this, or was this your first script?
This was the first script I ever worked on.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd written a lot of prose and like just short stuff for myself that I never published or had any ambition to publish whatsoever. And then just like stuff being in bands, writing lyrics, but that's kind of like a different level.
Right.
But yeah, it was that was my favorite part of the process.
I'm kind of one of those filmmaking crazy people that just love every process, so it's hard for me to pick. But I definitely think that editing would probably be towards the top of the list, if it's not the number one. I did VCR editing, VCR to VCR editing in high school. But then when I made my first short film called Better Off Undead in 2007, I taught myself how to edit on Adobe Premiere. And so I was doing actual editing. And I think for me, it's just the writing. When you write, you're creating the story. And when you're filming it, you're acting out the story. But in the editing is when you actually craft the story. There's so much you can do with editing. And you can save a lot of stuff in editing where if, let's say, your footage didn't turn out or you didn't get this coverage or whatever, in editing you can get super creative and just play around to make it work. And also, this is going to be just kind of a dickish thing, but when it comes to editing, it's just you. You don't have the stress of getting You don't have the stress of getting everyone's schedules together or what the weather's going to be like or if you have enough money to get this shoot or anything. It's just like, fuck, when it's editing, I can sit and edit for 20 hours on my own if I want to, and then sleep for a couple more and get up and continue. So I know that sounds kind of selfish, but it's actually just that it's a little bit less stressful.
Well, I completely understand that from being somebody that's made a movie myself. I didn't talk about this too much with you guys, but my movie that I made took 4 years over the course of weekends. Yeah.
That's bad taste right there.
Yeah. From when the first time it was originally written by somebody else who had produced it. He sent me the original script. From when I first said yes, I would like to help you with this movie to when we premiered it was 4 years and a month. And production was 2.5 years, and then editing was almost a year after that. So I completely understand the whole, let me do it myself and you leave me alone. I can see the appeal in that. So.
But I also want to say that doesn't mean that I had any negative experience working on anyone with dead weight, because really our cast and crew were fabulous, and I loved working with everyone. So it wasn't that I was like, I need to get the fuck away from these people.
Right.
It's just exhilarating when you sit in front of the computer and you start putting a scene together, because sure, the acting can be great when you're filming it and you're feeling really good about it, but you really don't know how it's going to work until you get into editing.
Right.
And so to me, that's when the story really starts to take life, and that's when I get most excited.
What advice would you guys give to people trying to get their foot in the door in filmmaking? If there was somebody who was saying, like, I want to make a low-budget movie myself, what's the first thing I should do? What would you tell them?
Well, one thing that we always try to drive home with people, like, we made Dead Weight in the middle of Wisconsin using, like, 22 out of the 25 or 26 or whatever speaking roles in Dead Weight. 22 of them were people that we were friends with. and very, very few people did we have to reach outside of our like pool of friends. The guy that shot it, our director of photography, Travis, he's an old friend of mine. The guy that did all the mixing and mastering of the audio is an old friend of mine. The guy that did the soundtrack is like a friend that I drew in. Like, it's just bringing in all these people that I've built friendships with and connected with over the past 4, 5, 6 years or 10 years even. Some of them and longer. I've known Travis for probably like 13 years. Just bringing them into the project over time and just putting it out there like there's no money to go around. We're doing this solely because we want to create something and put it out into the world as our story and getting people involved. And I feel like if someone's on, puts out there that they want, or puts the word out that they want to create something sincere and honest just for the sake of creating something, truly independent, just for the good of creating, then others are going to rally, like they're going to see your sincerity and rally behind that. Mm-hmm. Like when you talk about people wanting to get when you made mention of people that want to get their foot in the door with filmmaking, right. Like to me it's like, fuck that, build your own door and then walk through it. Like just do it. You don't have to be in Austin, Texas or LA or New York. We did all this shit around Wisconsin with our friends, people that John met at horror conventions, mutual friends of ours from over the years, people we had met recently, whatever. Like it was all just John and I and our friends making this together, but taking it seriously. Like, right. We're doing this all with our friends, but we're gonna do it right. And we made sure we did it right. Deadweight's copywritten work, and we had production insurance when we did everything. Like we made sure we took all the proper steps along the way. Mm-hmm. Like we had, clearance. We had a release forms. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Releases for every actor, every location, every extra, like everyone that was in a frame of the film. All the music, what Nick didn't compose, we just reached out to people we knew just for like little background music for the environment and got release forms for everything. So we did it all totally legit, but we just did it all with our friends.
And that's really important. I know I've been doing these reviews since about 2005 or so is when I first started this, so I've talked with and reviewed a bunch of people who've done a bunch of these things, and there's so many people who just think, oh, well, I'm making a little no-budget movie, nobody's ever going to see it, so who cares if I have releases? And it's like, well, if you ever want anybody to ever actually see your movie outside of your friends in your living room, that's really important. Yep. You really need to take the time, and it doesn't take that long, You go to a website or just about any book in the library about filmmaking and you copy a contract and you type it up and you have somebody sign it. It's not tough, but it does take a little bit of work on your part, and that's really important to do that. So I completely understand where you guys are coming from there. It is important that not only do you get people that are going to work for you, that are going to, be able to do it with that understanding that we're not getting paid, we're doing this for the love of doing this, but on the other hand, we're taking it seriously. We're not fucking around just because this is fun to do and let's do it because, yay, look, we made a movie. We're doing it because we want to make an actual movie. So kudos to you guys on that, because you'd be surprised how many people I talk to who are like, what's a release form? So
and really, like what you said about just going to the library and photocopying stuff, like that's more or less what we did. Like we have a lawyer that looked over everything and made sure that we were covered, and we changed stuff as needed, but more or less it was like Google and the library was how we made Deadweight and did it legitimately. Mm-hmm.
Now, do you guys, Deadweight's your most recent project. Neither of you guys have started anything new since then, right?
Well, I have a short film it's a short story that I'm adapting into a short film that we'll be shooting, hopefully, the end of April, beginning of May. And I have been working on other stories, fleshing ideas out, and I started really diving into a new feature, which I don't know if that's going to be the next feature that we'll be doing, but at least I've been diving into a story for a new feature script. So there's plenty of stuff going on. I'm actually going to be first ADing a shoot in Illinois in April that it's the wraparound of an anthology film. Okay. And Sid Haig's going to be the star of that one, so I'm going to be down there for a week helping out on that set. But in terms of our own stuff, for me it'll be the end of April, beginning of May, hopefully, when we get cameras rolling on this short film that right now I'm calling Pity. That's the working title. It might be the finished title.